if you look around the world, there's some pretty horrible things that go on. And any religion that maintains that its deity is benevolent has a lot of explaining to do. On the one hand, we have natural disasters, we have earthquakes, we have floods, we have volcanoes, we have tsunamis that can wipe out hundreds of thousands of people. And then on the other hand, we have the personal suffering. We have people developing tumours or wasting conditions that gradually erodes their muscle tissue or erodes their mind. We have children being born without any skin. It's all pretty nasty stuff, and it's not stuff that's brought about by the actions of other humans, so we can't just blame this all on human free will and human evil. Now, the defence that a great many Christians give to this is that things are just not as simple as they appear, that God literally moves in mysterious ways, that things that appear to us simplistic humans who can't see the bigger picture as being terrible, horrific acts, actually aren't. That if we knew everything that God knew, we would see that these are actually signs of his benevolence. It's just that we're too simplistic. We're just not sophisticated enough to be able to actually interpret these things properly. But this is the conundrum, and this is the point of me making this video, is to ask this question: why do the same Christians who write off bad things as happening for deeper reasons that we can't understand always take good things at face value, always assume that good things are evidence of God's love? Well, from a dispassionate perspective, you would think that it's now impossible to actually do this. That what we've said is that any action that God does, it's impossible for us to interpret. But what a lot of Christians would say in response to this is that, well, we know in advance that God is inherently good, that he is omnibenevolent, and so we can view all his actions in those terms. We can assume that an action that appears to us to be bad is in fact good, and an action that appears to us to be good must indeed be good, because we know that everything that God does is good. But that in itself brings a problem, because what's that based on? What's that pre-knowledge that God's good is based on? Well, it can't be based on his actions, because we can't interpret his actions. It can't be based on the Bible. It can't even be based on Jesus, because any of these things could have happened for bad reasons rather than good reasons. So it seems to me you've just removed any possible justification you ever had for assuming that God was good in the first place. In fact, you've actually made it impossible for God to demonstrate his benevolence, because any action that he does or could do is called into question. So that leads me neatly on to two questions that I'd like to pose for Christians. The first one is this: given the self-imposed impossibility of interpreting God's actions, on what grounds can you have, given that everything around us ultimately is as a result of God's actions, what justification do you have for saying that God is good? So my second question is this: if you are a Christian that believes that God is omnibenevolent, and you write off natural disasters and babies being born with horrible disfigurements as for deeper reasons that we can't understand, my question to you is, how can God's benevolence possibly be falsified? Or to frame it in the terms of a question that Christopher Hitchens kept asking: what act or act of omission, if carried out by God, would you accept as evidence that God is evil? Or would you even accept as an evil act that's been carried out by God? Well, my suspicions are you won't come up with anything, and my suspicions are that you've actually created a scenario where your entire claim for God's benevolence is now utterly baseless. Well, listen, I've told you what I've got to say. What I'm interested in is what you've got to say. In the meantime, thank you for watching this video.